Okay, if you could take your scriptures and read it silently as I read it aloud. This is Psalm 119, verses 60 to 64. And the psalmist is praising God, and the psalmist is rededicating his life to God. Because you have satisfied me, God, I promise to do everything you say. That's quite a statement, isn't it? I promise to do everything you say. I beg you from the bottom of my heart, smile. Be gracious to me just as you promised. When I took a long, careful look at your ways, I got my feet back on the trail that you blazed. In other words, the psalmist was just like you and me. Sometimes the psalmist got off the trail. I got my feet back on the trail you blazed. I was up at once, didn't drag my feet, or in Dale's case, didn't drag my boot. I was quick to follow your orders. The wicked hemmed me in, there was no way out. But not for a minute did I forget your plan for me. I get up in the middle of the night to thank you. Your decisions are so right, so true. I can't wait until morning. I'm a friend and a companion of all who fear you, of those committed to living by your rules. Your love, God, fills the earth. Train me to live by your counsel. There's literally 20 different worship messages just in this one psalm. But what the psalmist is really saying here is, fill the empty spaces in my life with your presence, with your guidance, with your love. And we all long to have these empty spots in our lives, and all of us have empty places in our lives. We all long to have them filled with something. And as you get older, you find that possessions don't fill them. Money, popularity, power, nothing fills that empty spot in our lives except the presence of God. The psalmist knows God pretty well. He knows that God satisfies us. He knows that God is gracious to us when we commit our lives to God's direction. He knows that God's promises are true. Even when you and I get off track from time to time, God knows that we know that God will take us back. And if you're off track today, or if you've been off track in the past, you know exactly what the psalmist is talking about. Once we get up and follow God again and don't drag our feet anymore, there's peace and serenity no matter what has happened in our lives. Now, when God fills the empty spots in our lives, and many times people are afraid to ask God to do that, there comes great responsibility. I constantly remind myself that I have responsibility to share God's good news. There's several different times I should have died, and I know that God kept me alive. And I guarantee you that God will keep you alive until you fulfilled your destiny. And every one of us is a special person. God has a special plan for our lives. It said, the wicked hemmed me in, there was no way out, but not for a minute did I forget your plan for me. I have been hemmed in by people that literally wanted to kill me on more than one occasion. Some even here in the United States. And I know that God has a special plan for you and for me. And you know, there's people that don't like the fact that you and I are trying to follow God. When I first started following God, I had some of my friends say, "You think you're better than me, don't you?" I said, "No, I don't think I'm better than you." "Oh, yes, you do. You're not hanging out with us. You're not doing this and you're not doing that." And I said, I've got to quit ruining my life. I've got to get my feet back on the trail that God blazed. I can't drag my feet anymore. I don't think I'm better than you. I just can't do those things with you guys anymore. Some of them eventually began to understand what had changed in my life. Some of them to this day did not understand, but they sort of hemmed me in. "You think you're better than me?" "No, not at all. I think I'm just like you." And so God has a plan for your life, a special plan. If you and I will get up every morning and say, "God, guide me today in the plan you have for my life." And with great power in your life, and I know that some of you have experienced this great power of God in your life, comes great responsibility. But the responsibility is not up to God, it's up to us. I'll never forget when I was a young man, our pastor one Sunday said, "Dream great dreams for God." Dream great dreams. I don't care what your age, whether you're young, middle-aged, or old. I want to encourage you to dream great dreams. What you and I think about, we become. When I spent a week with Dr. Norman Vincent Peale in New York City, that's one of the things Dr. Peale constantly said is, you are what you think. You're going to become what you're dreaming. So dream great dreams. And then this psalmist was so dedicated to serving God. "I get up in the middle of the night to thank God. God's decisions are so right. I get up in the middle of the night because I can't wait until morning to thank God." And who our friends are makes a huge decision and change in our lifetimes. I want to testify to you today that I am happier today and have more true friends than I have ever had in my entire lifetime. I'm talking about really true friends. When my daughter died, 3 men came to me and said, "If there's anything I can do, tell me, and I'll do it." And I said, "Yes, there is. I want you to drive 150 miles with me to our family ranch and be with me when I scatter my daughter's ashes on the pasture." And they showed up. I've never had friends like that before in my lifetime. It's really important that we make friends with really trustworthy, godly people who every morning are trying to get back on the trail with God. And look closely at this passage. Why did the psalmist get up in the middle of the night? It was to thank God. I really encourage you to keep a gratitude list and go over that list every day. God, I'm grateful for this, and I'm grateful for that, and I'm grateful for these people, and I'm grateful for these folks. Get a gratitude list. A friend of mine is having a great deal of difficulty at work, and a number of us have been praying for him, and God has turned it around in his life, and he's having a wonderful time at work. And he literally wants to get up in the middle of the night and thank God. The people you work with really make a difference in your life. And, we spend more time at work sometimes than we have the ability to spend at home. And the psalmist was so grateful for so many things. think about the things that you're grateful for this morning. Meditate on the things you want to praise God for. And the psalmist here gives us permission to get up in the middle of the night and thank God. I woke up at 3 o'clock this morning. I was absolutely exhausted from throwing hay and from feeding range cubes to the cattle and driving 300 miles. But it's just wonderful in the middle of the night to wake up and be able to thank God and know you're not alone and just have an attitude of gratitude in life. And I'm not going to lie to you. Sometimes I want to say, ain't it awful? Oh, that's terrible. Ain't it awful? Oh, my goodness. That's bad. That's bad. That's bad. But I don't allow myself to do that. I have an attitude of gratitude list that every day, lately I've been rolling down all the people in my life that have led me to Jesus. And I'm not kidding you. There's over 100 people I can remember their names that have led me to Jesus. I think of Edna Calhoun, absolutely crippled with terrible crippling rheumatoid arthritis. And she had to be in a wheelchair to teach our, would you believe, 5th and 6th grade boys Sunday school class. There's nothing wilder than a 5th and 6-year-old boy, 5th and 6th grade year old boy. And we were wild. And she constantly had to say, now boys, calm down. Let's go back to the lesson. Calm down. Let's go back to the lesson. And so when I became a Christian and I was in college, I called up Edna and said, Edna, can I take you out to dinner? And so we had dinner. I said, Edna, I just want to thank you for putting up with me when I was in 5th grade and 6th grade and just wilder than a March hare. We just had a new little, I'm a grandfather, I want you to know. We just had a new little black Angus bull calf at our ranch. And he's the cutest thing. He's finally figured out that I'm not after him. And I think for the first time in his life, he's eating hay. You know, he's still on mama's milk, but he was eating some of that fresh brome hay I brought down yesterday. And he was so cute. But my goodness gracious, is there a lot of energy in that little black Angus calf. He can run through those pastures and just with energy that you and I, we envy it, don't we, when we become older. But I'm just so grateful for seeing the beauty of God's creation in that little calf. And I just thank God. I want you to thank God, too, for every negative thing in your life. My enemies have turned out to be my best friends. Doesn't that sound crazy? That sounds what they call counterintuitive. But your enemies really make you think about what motivates you. And literally, my enemies have always been my best friends. Are you ready for this? So put your enemies on your thank you list. And say, God, thank you for this person. Right now, I want to get angry, but I know this person isn't in my life by chance, and I'm going to thank you in advance for what they're doing. For number one thing they're doing is to make me pray about my enemies. And for number two, I'm doing what Jesus said, bless your enemies, don't curse your enemies. Bless your enemies and curse them not. And really, your enemies really make you stand up and take notice of what's going on in your life. And I want to say something, I've never said this in church before all these years in a worship message, but I'll say it to you again. I think every church, every Sunday school class, every church needs at least one atheist in it. And you know why we need atheists in church? An atheist will really make you think about what you believe. That atheist, many times in my life, has been the best friend I've ever had. I got a couple atheists right now that are friends of mine. And I'm grateful for their honesty. A lot of times Christians will sugarcoat things. A real atheist will not sugarcoat things. They'll just right in your face tell you what they think. So, in addition to thanking God for all the good things in your life, when you get up in the middle of the night and you can't sleep, start thanking God for all the difficult people in your life. And it really forces you to come to God. I'm a friend and companion of all who fear you, of those committed to living by your rules. Look at your friends. Really try to make your closest friends those committed to following God. And then the psalmist ends this wonderful psalm by saying, your love, God, fills the earth. Train me to live by your counsel. Would you believe there's a curse in that? Your love, God, fills the earth. And there's sort of a curse in this. Train me to live by your counsel. What you're saying is, okay, God, now here I am. Train me. Well, if you've ever been to basic training or heard about it, that sergeant trains you. And it is not an easy training. If you have a really hard boss or a really difficult husband or a really difficult wife, that person trains you. Every wife basically says, I'm going to train this guy. And every husband says, I'm going to try to modify my wife's training. You do that with your children. The obedient kids will say, Dad, train me, but then when you start training them, it's painful. And so, your love, God, fills the earth. Allow yourself to be trained by the Holy Spirit of God. It's not going to be easy, but God will train you. Jesus gives a great example. I was just reading Jesus' words about this week. He says, a father who really loves their daughter or their son will train them not to be cruel, but so their son or daughter grows up to be happy and adjusted and have internal discipline. And really, isn't that what the Christian life is all about? It's having internal discipline. It's having emotional maturity. It's having an obedient heart, an honest and humble heart. You know, you really can't receive communion in your spirit without having a humble heart, an honest heart, and a heart that says, train me by your love which fills the earth. Train me to live by your counsel. Amen.